Meeting is being recorded on Microsoft Teams. And participation in the meeting is consent to be recorded and a rebroadcast of the recorded meeting. The meeting will be posted on the Culver YouTube site. And if you haven't muted your cell phone, please do so.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So with that, we'll start the roll call.
Yes, thank you.
Marty Oosterbaum.
Here.
Gary Peric here. Sally Ricciardi.
Here.
Bill Clevenger.
Here.
Tony Mayfield.
Here.
And Karen isn't here yet, or she won't be here. So
Yeah, she's
okay.
not here.
Pledge of Allegiance.
Yes.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The time changed. It looks like we forgot to change that clock. What? No, I didn't think I was, but I could take that duty on. Next item on the agenda is approval of the minutes from the 5/16/22 regular meeting. I have a
Move to accept.
second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion. is approved. Unanimous. Town manager report.
Under tip review, glad we just had that meeting, because you'll understand why I'm trying to get some proposals to do some of the work on the development on the south end of town. Basically, we're gonna need Baker Tilly and Barnes and Thornburg to work on that if we're going to move forward with that. Jim and Phil from Barnes and Thornburg have already had an initial conversation with the Collins Group, which is Beachview Properties, about this project. So I think Alan, myself, and Bob Porter and Wade McGee met a few weeks back to really discuss where that's at. As you guys recall, Burke Richardson was the attorney involved in that. Burke has moved to another position, which is one reason this kind of has been
Stalled.
stagnant for a bit. But I think Al is probably going to continue to retain him. But in the meantime, Al updated us. They're coming along with their preliminary engineering design plan. So I think he's ready to kind of start moving forward on the actual paperwork. First thing for us then is to create the new TIF district. Then second to that would be to, along the way, figure out if indeed this could be a ready grant or not. And as we just talked about in the last meeting, I'm still trying to figure out if we're going to be able to submit a project for that or not. So my plan is to update Al on what I know after the Wednesday meeting when South Bend Elkhart does their roadshow. That's one of the questions on the docket for Culver. So then I'll get back with Mr. Collins. Lake Max
Do you
phase.
foresee that this is going to have a big stall, or do we think that that's moving forward? I mean, as far as you know, it's,
I think with or without Ready, he's interested in doing that development. And he's interested in trying to work with redevelopment to.
I mean, when we heard the earlier report from Burke, you know, it sounded like they were really moving.
Yeah, I think they're just in that stage of mapping out their engineering and their design. In the meantime, they have other major developments going on in Plymouth. So, you know, I'm not surprised at the pace we're working at. And frankly, it goes right along with my current pace. Get with it.
So where we kind of left that in my mind is that they were still trying to figure out how many of what type of units to
Right.
put together. And And I thought we were thinking our willingness to provide incentives would be in relation to what that looked like with respect to who was going to wind up living there. Who was going to be part-time or full-time, I think is basically the question. So is that still where our collective minds are at on this, or are we sure we want to do something no matter what? Or?
I think what will probably impact that conversation the most is how we do whatever that agreement, that expenditure agreement would be. So, you know, if we say, well, redevelopment is willing to invest in this infrastructure, these utility hookups, et cetera, in return, this would be the expectation for this part of the development, or this number of units, or this cost, you know, whatever the case is. So.
Okay, thanks.
Lake Max Phase 2 Trail. We've completed construction on this project. So the town will be meeting with the construction crew as well as NDOT to do what's called a walkthrough. And that walkthrough generates a final checklist. And we don't close out the grant until that is done. So when we walk through, when we did this on Jefferson Street and State Road 10, you guys might recall in one of my reports, there was some sod that had died, that they have to maintain that sod over the period of that construction time. There were some areas that we felt were not, you know, this needed to be regraded or this needed to be fixed or whatever. So we're in that phase of this project. The major construction's done. You can see the trail all the way through. Now we do this walkthrough. So that's good. We were hoping construction would be completed by the end of May, and that's pretty much where they planned it. You may notice out here on Washington Street, you know, we used to have a bit of a bump out on each side of the road. It was pretty narrow there. We got some complaints about it. Also, our snowplow truck can't quite fit through it. So we took the bump out on the north end of the street out and just ran the curb. So it's a couple feet wider at that intersection where it comes off of Washington. That was covered under the grant cost, so we didn't have to have a separate expense line item for that, which is why we didn't come back and ask you for more money. So if you notice that, that's what that was. But once that walkthrough is done, we get that final list. We're within time of closing out the grant on that. Lake Max Phase 3 as well as State Jefferson Street are still in the phase of going through environmental. We already did the public input meetings on that, as you know. So I'm going to skip down to broadband fiber. That RFP is due back the end of this month. We put the 27th as a date, and they have until 4 p.m. on the 27th to get their proposals into us. The council could open those on the 28th. They would not be advised to approve one of those at that time. What I'd like for the town council to do is open the bids just so they're public record, and then allow the task force to analyze those and come back with a recommendation. And I had set up a meeting with the broadband task force for the end of the week because I'm on vacation till the 29th. So I believe I set that up for the 30th. So we'll get back to you on what that's looking like once we get those in. Tamarack property annexation, that's related to what we were talking about earlier. Crossroads Culver, the comprehensive planning is underway. This coming Thursday, we have a Crossroads Culver meeting, and the agenda is pretty much set to have MACOG there with the steering committee to launch the beginnings of the comprehensive planning. You guys will see, I showed the town council, I probably should have brought it to you, but we've already started some public engagement. We've got some postcards that we're handing out. I'm going to be giving some of those to the library. MACOG just sent me an updated survey sheet. We need to throw out the ones we have, Karen. But essentially, we're going to ask people to fill out these postcards, and it kind of asks the question of, if you were going to write a postcard 5 or 10 years from now to somebody to come to Culver, or that you happen to be in Culver, what is it you love about the place? So what do you want to see here to brag about in a postcard? And that'll be disseminated to organizations. I'll bring them to you guys and each of the committees that I attend. But in the meantime, MACOG is going to work with our steering committee to plan out public engagement for the rest of the summer and into the fall. And that'll just be one of the activities. And there's also a survey handout that I'll post on TGL social media. We'll have a hard copy of those here at Town Hall, at the library. And then MACOG's talking about also doing like a pop-up engagement where, you know, if we want to do a special one-off, they'll come in and pop up attend. We're also going to have Amber's intern at the farmer's market with these engagement pieces as well. So we'll educate Amber and her staff on what to do with those pieces. Amber will happen to be at that Crossroads Culver meeting, so some of those steering committee members may take charge of a specific public engagement event. But that means we're in that early stages of comp planning where we go out to the public and ask people what they think. Ready grants, as we talked about in your session earlier, there's a road show now going on with Southbound Elkhart. They're coming to Marshall County on Wednesday. Our consultant is going to be at their road show tomorrow. Hopefully we'll get some answers to the questions that we have. We did meet with the new head of their Ready committee for South Bend Elkhart region. Her name is Taryn. She spent a day in Marshall County. I gave her a tour of Culver and met with her over lunch with Crossroads members. So we got a good idea of what's going on with Ready through her. So that will certainly impact on whether or not we submit projects here locally. Regional Stellar projects. If you looked at our last council meeting, we just opened bids for that project. The town council has not approved a bid yet because the process with Okra is you have your engineering firm, your design company analyze those bids to ensure they meet the requirements of the RFP/RFQ process. So Troyer Group will come back to the town of Culver and say, we recommend you accept this lowest bid because yada yada. Right now, just for your information, we were hoping for construction bids in the 485,000 range. And all of them were 530,000 and above. So I think second lowest was like 570. So we will, depending on if we accept that lowest bid of 530, we will either adjust the scope of the project or we will look for funding to cover that amount. I'm not surprised the bids came in a little higher than expected because we established that construction budget probably 2 years ago. So anyway, that's what's going on with the park project. Next I have on here the tree commission. Mike, who happens to be sitting here and chairs our tree commission, they have had their initial meetings for the year. The tree commission was budgeted $20,000 through the town's budget for this year. And that's an increase over previous budgets, mainly because they want to do a lot of tree removal. They haven't done plantings in a while, I think 2 years maybe. So they'd also ideally like to do plantings, but the cost for plantings has gone up since our earlier years. I think we averaged $350 a tree, and now it's more like $450 a tree. Anyway, because of the sort of record number of removals, they have figured out they could use that entire $20,000 budget just on removals. So they discussed ways to potentially bring in extra dollars to do plantings and wondered if that is something that redevelopment can consider. You know, these trees go in right of way, parkway, right of way. They don't go on private property. Some of them probably adjoin the TIF or on roads that are TIF. But I don't know if beautifying the town falls under your purview or not. I don't know if we've ever had redevelopment on tree commission. Do you?
No.
Not in the past. At least not in your time.
Not my time.
Since it started, we've never had.
Yeah, and the ask that they came up with was for planting specifically, they would like ideally to plant 25 trees because they get a discount at the 25 mark, and that would equate to about $12,000. So I told the tree commission I would put it in my report and see what you all thought of that. And then the last thing is the teen space. Amber's been working with the teens and we're hoping summer months for a few of them possibly enjoy it, but those same teens are very busy as is Amber. So we're taking that week by week. Maybe August. Yeah. And that's it. So that tree commission debate is up to you guys. But I did ask Mike to potentially attend for any questions or comments.
And I would assume that the park project is kind of, it'd leave up in the air until
Yeah, until a bid has been accepted.
the bid's accepted and it's decided whether
Yeah.
you're gonna pare it down or.
Yeah. I
Trying
think
to
Shannon
go
and
with-
Troy Group will come back to Amber and have a discussion about, you know, does the town want to proceed with the full scope, or do you want to make adjustments, or do you have potential for funding elsewhere? And we did not budget additional dollars for this project in the town budget.
Right.
So it would likely come back to you guys. It's the matching agency.
Okay. Well, thank you. Would you like to discuss the tree at this point, or at what point, Mike, do you need to know? Do you need to order trees?
We need to commit sometime this summer. The trees don't go in until fall because of the weather conditions. Because you end up trying to water them all and it just doesn't work. So we plant them in the fall. The removal of trees occurs, actually will start at any day now.
Yeah.
So they'll come out and the new trees will start in the fall. So that's what we're looking for is,
I mean, you have to let them know by, say, August 1st or
we need to get, we need to commit to them. It's a huge nursery up in Middlebury.
Yeah.
And, we need to commit to them sometime in probably the next month and a half, because we need to get on their list. for
Yeah.
fall plantings.
guess that's my biggest question was, you know, because we've never done trees before.
Right, right.
Um,
So
and I don't-
they plant the trees also, or does somebody, are there other volunteers that plant the trees?
Well, Gary, I'll tell you.
all the volunteers
I'll
are
tell you
his
the story
age and
you're looking
older.
at. I think we averaged, we're about total 300 years old, the 5 members. So 17 years ago, when one of the town members, actually, one of the board members, was the founder of this thing and started, we were doing plantings in those days. But the trees got older and we got old too. So we, just for your information, and I know that town board members are on the notes, Sally knows this. We've planted in the last 17 years about 500 trees. And these are all parkwood trees. During that time, the trees get old. And what's happening now is, and if you drive around town, you'll see it. These old maples and things that are just they're falling apart. They're falling on the street. We've had one that went through the windshield of the car. Limbs get, they get barren and they fall. So we've been trying to keep up with this thing. We do three things. We plant trees, we remove trees, and we actually prune trees. When you plant under the town ordinance, when you plant trees, there's a couple of things we must do. One of them is as the trees grow, we must keep a canopy that's at least 8 feet above the street, so that people can walk under them, and then cars and school buses and things like that can see the corners and what have you. So it does take some ongoing pruning also. The nursery we use in Middlebury actually does that for us. They have bucket trucks, and it's a big project. And by the way, we get a tremendous help from Bob Porter. When they trim these branches off, Bob's guys pick them up, they haul them out. When we take trees down, Bob's guys pick up the big pieces and they take them out, 10 to the dump place out there where people can claim them if they want trees. So Bob's guys, and that's the only reason we can keep this thing even near where it is. What's happened, and Jenny was alluding to it, is that the faster we go, the behinder we get. Heard that story. And these trees, as they're getting old, we started 2 years ago really concentrating on bad trees. We started taking them out. The last 2 years, we took out 20 trees. Right now, we have a list of 20 trees for this year. And the more people see this happening, the more they call the town hall and ask if we can do something for them. So we need to catch up is really what it amounts to. And we're taking all these trees out. And as I said a few minutes ago, we planted 500 trees. But we're starting to get holes in those parkways now where we don't have trees. And so we need to start putting trees back in. Any place you look around town, if you see something that's not huge, that's maybe that big or smaller, 6-8 inches, that's a tree we've planted. If you go out by the cemetery, this is an example, all those trees that are along the new bike path, those are all planted plants. And it's like that all over town. So we need to catch up, and we had a meeting the other day and somebody raised the question about a CRC and would they do it. I talked to Jenny and she said it may fit. I don't know that it will. You probably know more than anyone. So we would appreciate it if you would consider it.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm looking at it from safety or economic development perspective. I can see taking old trees out that are, pushing sidewalks up and limbs are falling on people. I can see that as a safety issue. But putting new trees in, I mean, you put them in to avoid a sinkhole creating in the parkway, right? Which would be a hazard.
Not really, Gary. I'll give you an example. If we take 2 trees out that are, let's say, 50 feet apart, or maybe even a little bit more than that. Some of these big maples, we took one out on Winfield the other day last fall that had a 5-foot diameter trunk. When we take those out, we cannot plant a tree back in that hole because we can't get that. If we tried to take that stump out, we'd be digging 10 feet deep in the ground. Mm-hmm. So if we take 2 trees out, our goal is to put something in between them so that there will continue to be growth on the parkways. So it doesn't necessarily mean 2 come out, 2 go back in. It's whatever we can do to avoid the trunks and
okay.
That controls.
I don't know whether, beautifying the town, which a tree does.
Yeah.
I mean, if you've got nothing but, quite honestly, if you've got no trees, you'll have dead grass before long. So, I don't know if beautifying the town is in our purview or not. I'd almost have to ask.
Well, in my mind, again, we don't pay a whole lot of attention sometimes because it's there and it's part of the beauty of the place that we've grown up with, that we've seen. But if it wasn't there,
Yeah,
then that would, then we would say, gosh, what's happened here? What's wrong with this place? It doesn't quite feel or look the same. So it has a lot to do, I think, with how you feel about your environment, where you are, with the place that you're growing or that you've been living, your life in. But it's, again, you kind of have to pay attention to it, or you really don't think about it.
That's true.
Because it's just part of it. I would think that, again, new communities are going to want trees, are going to want to have that visual, that sense, that feeling of it creates that more home-like environment. And with the lake and all the things we have, it's a big part of our community. So
By the
it's
way,
not just safety, but I think, economically, I don't know if you can put it in that exact terms, but I think it does add to the vitality and the feel of the environment you live in.
I wonder if you could liken it to the facade grants that we do support, which include sidewalks and driveways. I think some landscaping, I'd have to double check.
We've been a member of Tree City for 15 or 17 years now. And if you read their literature, there is a benefit from trees, and that is that they absorb carbon dioxide.
Yeah.
So from a health standpoint, they are very important. If we had a barren town, I think it would be another issue, but one of the things, we've been doing this for 17 years now, and we started debating this issue of, does anyone really know this? Do they recognize it? Do they understand what's going on? And about 4 years ago, we did our first pruning for these trees. And by the way, when they plant new trees, they won't prune them until they're probably 3 or 4 years old. They have to get some growth to them and some stability. But we received calls, the town received calls, when Ginny was on the board, from Academy parents and Academy alumni who came back to town and said, wow, these tree-lined streets are really beautiful. So there's a beauty factor. I think there's a safety factor. There is a safety factor from the standpoint of taking trees out. Jenny and my conversation was one about, she wasn't sure that the taking of the trees out was something that you would be able to handle more than granting 25 or 27 trees. But it can be which comes first, the chicken or the egg, quite honestly. If you consider this and you think that some of the removal costs are something that CRC could absorb, then we can take the funds that the town grants us and buy trees.
Well, I mean, to me, it's the pruning and the removal seem like pure safety issues.
They are.
Which,
$12,000, I think that this got something that adds value to our town.
We can also, I still have on my list of to-dos to ask Phil the question of, can you pay for specific event?
Yeah.
Related, you guys know you can pay for marketing,
Mhm.
an event, but we weren't sure about like operation of the event or whatever. I could pose this question as well if you want to put both of those out to him.
That would be good. And, I'm looking at our grant program for the facade grants. And, it's restoration, repair, doors, windows, lighting, signage, masonry work, painting, cleaning the building facades, gutters and downspouts, architectural fees associated with facade improvements, roof repairs, replacement of existing sidewalks and driveways, including paint, seal coating and painting. Yeah, that all has to do with making the building look better and the surrounding area look better. trees fit into, I think, make landscaping fits into making places look better. So if this fits, then there's a chance that either putting trees in would fit, and the safety of removal is definitely there.
Yeah, I mean, it's a certainty.
Yeah,
But I mean, like Tony says, beautification, maybe that increases property values.
Well, the test is right in serving or benefiting the economic development area. That's what we just learned. And I think
Yeah.
you could make that case. Certainly the safety case.
Well, I think, the other thing is that if we're in a situation for a facade grant and sidewalks or trees, we'd do that for a facade grant.
Yeah.
I don't see why we can't do that for this.
I'm obviously I'm trying to sell you on this, but that's a good point though. And this big tree I told you about over on Winfield that we took out. Once we got that tree out last fall, Bob this spring said, "Can you bring the tree guy back? We need to go 18 inches deep with the machine to get that stump down, because that tree actually lifted the sidewalk." And we've run into, I would guess conservatively, maybe 20 instances around town where sidewalks have been lifted, some of them as much as 6 inches.
Yeah.
There used to be a group called the Walking Ladies. I don't know if you've ever heard of them. They'd meet for breakfast or for coffee, and then they'd walk around town. And a couple of them took
Lots of pictures.
falls. And
Yeah.
because of these sidewalks. This one on Winfield, Bob came up to me and said, "Can you get this thing down 18 inches? Because we've got to replace all the curbs in part of the street." And that's what these trees will do. And we're going to, on an ongoing basis, we're going to be probably uncovering more and more of this kind of stuff.
I think you got me thinking deeper on this, and taking it out, definitely a safety issue, but you got to replace it with something after you take it out. You can't just hack it. So I'm starting to come around that, just buying these trees, as long as they're going to replace ones that have been taken out, is probably a safety / economic development.
Has the growth of the new ones been good? I mean, that's.
Oh, they're terrific, yeah. If you go anywhere around town.
Yeah.
And look at something in the parkway that's maybe 6 or 8 inches or less, that's a tree we planted. Probably one of the very evident spots is down by the cemetery. And because we talked about that when that was originally presented, we said, we put, I think, 12 or 15 trees down. And we said, "Oh my gosh, you're gonna put this new sidewalk in. What are we gonna do with our trees?" And actually, they did some redesign, I think, if I recall.
Yeah.
And preserve the trees. I think there was only one tree that had to be taken out down there. Now, there was a big old tree not right near the corner. There's one more back near one of the entrances to the cemetery. And that's the only one that had to be taken out. And by the way, that's one on our schedule to replace.
And the fact that we have interested people, citizens that are doing this, working on this for so many years, I think we should move to allocate this money.
I do want to raise a question about affordability and precedent though.
Yeah.
So I don't know what discretionary funds we've got. I just don't know, and it's $12,000 and probably we got it somewhere, but shouldn't we discuss that? And then it occurs to me that there was it the police car that we paid for it because they came in higher than budgeted, or there was a crash involving and then it wasn't budgeted, and so we paid for that out of the safety exception, right? And so, but I don't want to be the place where we go to whenever the budget gets exceeded from what the town council normally pays for. And so I'm not sure I want to establish. I as a one-timer, I'd probably be more comfortable with it if we say we don't want to be establishing precedent where we're now sharing with the town council the responsibility for that. for the plantings and the removal.
You know, I'm not, by the way, I'm not here to ask you to make a decision. I'm asking you to, I don't know how many of you even knew that the tree commission existed. And it's on the agenda usually. What we've done over that 17 years. I don't think anyone's aware of it. What we're asking you is to consider this. It's not an ongoing thing. We have, over that 17 years, we've had budgets as in the town council was very generous to us this last year with giving us a $20,000 budget. We've had budgets as low as $4,000 or $5,000. You can't even begin to plan. You can't do anything for that. There's some trees we've taken down that are close to $4,000. So they, you know, their budgets were based on how good times were or they weren't. We went through the recession, and when this thing started, the 2008, 9, and 10 recession. And in those days, and prior to that, by the way, there were lots of grants available. Alcoa was a big factor in granting tree plantings. We had to do the planting, but Tony Sellers, they used to bring the auger in, they'd dig the hole, and we'd get the high school kids, and we had 20 or 25 people, and we'd go out and get pizzas on a Saturday morning, and these kids would help us plant trees. It's just, there are no grants anymore.
Yeah, so Mike, I'm not sure it's in your mind. I'm worried about setting the precedent. I'm thinking more about the town council.
I understand it. And just so you understand, this is not an ongoing thing where we're trying to, right now, we're trying to catch up. And I told the town this. And what we were doing was, one year we had money to take trees out. Next year, we might have money to put new trees in, but we didn't have money to take trees out. And sooner or later, 2 or 3 years down the road, we had to do some pruning. And so when I say the faster we go, the behinder we get, that's what it is. This situation, really the last couple of years taking trees out, has gotten to be monumental. And, I mean, you just drive around and look at these old neighborhoods. You'll see, you look up into them and you'll see dead branches. They're dropping stuff like crazy. So Marty, I'm not asking for something that's ongoing, and I know what the perception might be.
It's a really good point, though. And maybe it's even something we need to think about the way we do sidewalks, like maybe down the road, the council should consider a tree program where if you plant one in the right of way, or you want to plant one, and granted, I don't know that we want to encourage people to do stuff in the right of way that isn't sort of commissioned through, you know, this type of organization.
Right.
But like, you know, maybe people would plant trees if they could get half of it paid for the way they do their sidewalks, or I don't know.
Would you accept a motion that this would be a one-time expenditure?
Oh, certainly I would. Oh, sure.
Well, I'll make a motion that we approve or allocate $12,000 on a one-time basis for new trees.
Second,
You know,
for discussion.
yeah, the one-time basis, I mean, what if 10 years from now things change? Are we precluded from ever considering the organization's requests in the future?
Well, I'll try the motion without the one time. I move that, I withdraw that motion, and I make a motion that we approve the $12,000 for the trees.
A second. I think it's a worthy.
Is there discussion? Any discussion?
I guess my discussion is, will the notes reflect the discussion?
Yeah.
A discussion,
If the notes reflect the discussion, then I'm fine.
a robust discussion was had.
Yeah,
by this
about
committee.
precedent, a robust discussion around precedent was held. I'll be fine with it.
Concern about establishing a precedent. That's not our intent. But that this was felt this was a worthy need, and that it was passed. That's okay.
In fact, I think the town council, Mike, and your recall's going to be better than mine, but I think the town council was very supportive and wanted to see, had felt that maybe we had gotten behind because of the, you know, COVID and everything, and that maybe a more robust approach, you know,
The town
to this
council
was in the town's best interest.
They've everyone has budgets. They've been as generous as they can be. When things were not so good, 8, 9, and 10, they weren't as generous, but they probably didn't have the revenues. And they were generous, like really generous just last year.
Yeah.
But, you know, it's just all of a sudden we're looking at these trees and we're seeing more and more and more. And I think people are perhaps aware that this program is available now because I just got calls the other day. Can you take, you know, is my tree eligible in my parkway for removal? Now, we have to also look at the trees and make sure that we just not going to take every tree down because someone doesn't have a good tree. But, you know, we've used an arborist for the first 5, 6 years. They looked at all these trees and inventoried all the trees. And so, you know, we did I think some professional review of what needed to be done in the town. By the way, there were 1,400 trees.
We have a motion on the table.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. I appreciate that very much. And when you get this done, we'll take you around and show you the trees. It won't be till fall, October probably. But didn't expect a response as fast, but thank you very much.
The next thing on the agenda is approval of claims. Correct?
Thank you, Mike.
Financial reports.
Oh,
Right.
I thought
Is that
we'd
right?
done that. I'm sorry. I guess we were talking about the financial report. You've all received the
Yeah.
May 20 report. Are there any questions? A motion to approve the,
So moved.
got a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I have not read the report, so I guess I had to abstain. I just didn't have an opportunity to read. Sorry.
I'll make a note of that.
And
Not from like my responsibilities.
so the next item on the agenda is the approval of claims. We have
Old business. Okay.
saw everybody's received the claims. So
I'll second.
Bill, make a motion in a second. All in favor?
Aye.
And I think that next item on the broadband meeting, Jenny basically took care of that for us.
I have nothing to add to Jenny's report.
And on new business,
It's okay.
since you're ahead of him on the schedule, it's up to you. Gary and I were going to take a look at the Façade grant, try and update it. We weren't able to get together this month, and so hopefully in this following month, we'll get that accomplished and have something that present at the next meeting.
Absolutely.
Is there any public input? Yes.
Yeah.
I just have some materials I thought you guys might want to see since you all helped us with the funding. This is all behalf of the visitor center. This is the big plein air magazine for the Culver paint out. I marked it there. The magnets are finally completed. I brought some if you guys want. I know you got some, but
I got
you
one.
want to check those out. And then if anybody wants to see, this is the final draft of the Lake Fest pamphlet. We are very ahead this year. Andrew's been doing a great job with it. So if you guys want to check it out, it looks amazing. So, and then the save the date card that we've been handing out, I took like 2,000 of them to Bailey's. They've been putting them in bags, parking shop, delivering them to businesses around Marshall County. And then the poster is pretty much the same, but you've probably seen these posted everywhere. And then marked in this as well are the advertisements you helped us fund for the LMA directory. So other than that, we have the Lake Fest banner, which is up down by the beach. It'll be put up top on the park fence and at the welcome sign for Lake Fest 2 weeks before the event. But yeah, we're just chugging along. So
Are there signs? I saw one in front of Andrea's on Lakeshore Drive
like
for
the
Lake,
yard sign.
for Lake Fest, the yard sign for Lake
Yeah,
Fest.
so all the committee members have signs and then we put them in the park. But we actually decided to use more of the funding for the save the date cards to distribute them more outside of Culver versus funding, like if you live in Culver, you know about Lake Fest. So we are focusing more of our promo efforts on the save the date cards and delivering them outside of the outside of the county and more widely outside. And then this is the same advertisement right here that went in the Lakes magazine that because you guys helped us fund for the Lakes magazine advertisement as well. So that'll be in the June and July, in the East region and the West region of the Lakes magazine. And then other than that, we brought in our intern for the visitor center, Georgia Rice. She's a Culver Academy graduate. She's been working with us. She's been at the farmers market. She actually did start the public input for the Culver comprehensive plan this past Saturday. She started those postcards that Jenny was talking about. And then this week we'll have our first call with Georgia and our representative from 26 Digital. Matt Key approached CRC to help fund the training on like social media and website design, which is, I've used about 3 hours of that conference time with him. It's been tremendously helpful, and Georgia will be using some of that with me this week. So yeah, that's our updates on all the print materials and stuff.
Is that going to be going on to the county signs, the information signs of by the, yeah, the electronic signs? Thank you.
Oh, I have not communicated with anyone too, but I can. So,
Because I think that's one of the things.
yeah. In terms of Lake Fest, you mean?
Yeah. in terms
Yeah,
of
no,
like
I have
that.
not. I guess I can talk to Karen about that and how to communicate that. So I will
Actually, I
work on
have
that.
the distribution.
Oh, do you?
So I
Okay.
will get the distribution.
Okay. Do you need anything from me? Okay.
No, well, I'm gonna give you the distribution
Okay.
and then you can send to
Send out to
them
them.
what you would like them to put on the boards.
I would really appreciate that. Thank you. It will be then, Sally, to answer your question. Do you need anything? Okay. Yes.
All right, thank you.
But yeah, that's all of that. So feel free to check it out and browse through it, but lots of
You got one.
materials to advertise recently, so.
Better be.
One of those available.
I'll tell you the
So
story if you got.
this is actually the final draft. I looked over it, okayed it. I'll sit down with Andrea tomorrow to go over it. And then if this is the final draft, we will distribute it will be printed and be done by next week. And we will start distributing them. So we are, very happy to get these out well before. Normally they don't come out until the weekend of Lake Fest. So we made it our goal to promote this before Lake Fest, well before it. So yeah, we'll get these out in brochures, racks all around Marshall County. So yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
Great work.
Yes.
You're doing
Yeah.
a great job.
Yeah, thanks for supporting all of it. It's been really helpful to get it all done ahead of time. So yeah. Anybody want a magazine or magnet?
Good one.
Did you all get one?
I got one
Did
in
you get one?
the other meeting.
I'll take one.
There you go. We've been Georgia's been doing a good job at the farmer's market.
Jenny needs one.
There you go. We've been
I'm gonna need a new
handing them out
refrigerator.
like crazy. So
I'm gonna need a new refrigerator.
I think we had, from the funding we were provided, we were able to print off about 3,000 of these, but we still have money to do more. So we're gonna keep rolling these through and handing them out as much as possible to promote all the events year round. So Thank you.
Thanks.
Is there any member member input? Tony?
No, I thought that our guest tonight was very informative. And there's a ton of things I still don't have any idea about. But I thought that she was very good and that, I did certainly pick up some sense of the ability of this particular commission is to do quite a bit. And that there's a great deal of flexibility, it seems like, in what can be processed. So it's
I thought it was excellent having Heidi.
yeah.
I learned a lot. Well, that's my comment.
I can tell you that it doesn't matter how long you've been on. A refresher, and you still learn quite a bit. So
Yeah, I would
Very
echo
good.
all your comments and I would agree. Marty?
I'm echoing Gary.
very good. Do I have a motion to adjourn to claims?
So moved.
Yeah. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.